Courtroom Shenanigans.
Welcome to another episode of Courtroom Shenanigans. Today we feature the top 3 list of Latino cop killers in the States. So with no time to waste, let's get into this. In third place on the list, we have Mark Gonzalez. Gonzalez shot and killed Sergeant Kenneth Vann as they both stopped at a traffic light late night in San Antonio, Texas. 2 a.m., May 28, 2011, Bexar County Sheriff Deputy Kenneth Vann was responding to an unrelated shooting call when he stopped in his marked car at the intersection of Rigsby Avenue and Loop 410 in southeast San Antonio. At the same time, Mark Gonzalez pulled up at the intersection and without warning fired dozens of rounds at Vann with an AR-15 rifle. Once the shooting stopped, the deputy's patrol car, still in gear, rolled into the intersection and came to rest against traffic crash barriers underneath an overpass. The bullets shattered the front and rear passenger windows, repeatedly striking the officer. Bexar County Sheriff Deputy Kenneth Vann died instantly. Several drivers called the police after they spotted Vann's patrol car riddled with bullets. Gonzalez fled the scene in the vehicle and remained at large for 1 week. In June 2011, authorities said they received a tip from one of Gonzalez's friends. The informant said Gonzalez had confessed to him and told him, "I killed a cop. Don't tell anyone, not even your wife." Mark Gonzalez was arrested on June 5, 2011. Gonzalez was arrested without incident on a Sunday afternoon at his far south side home in San Antonio after a joint operation by SWAT teams from Bexar County and the FBI, as seen in this video. Mark Gonzalez immediately requested a lawyer, refusing to answer investigators' questions. Gonzalez was in Bexar County Jail on 1 count of capital murder of a police officer, his bail set at $1.5 million.
Kind of took a deep breath and really gave thanks.
Authorities located an AR-15 assault rifle at Gonzalez's home. Testing later revealed bullets recovered from Vann's autopsy were fired from Gonzalez's assault rifle. In addition, investigators discovered the firing pin on Gonzalez's weapon had been intentionally altered in an attempt to prevent it being linked to the shooting of Vann. Cell phone records also placed Gonzalez in the area where the sergeant was murdered. Mark Gonzalez had been arrested several times beginning in the late 1980s, including twice on charges of unlawfully carrying a weapon, once on a driving while intoxicated charge, and once on a charge of burglary of a vehicle. Investigators determined Gonzalez fired at Vann's patrol vehicle 46 times, striking Vann 26 times and killing him at the scene. Kenneth Vann was 48 years of age at the time of the murder and left behind a wife and 3 children. He was a 24-year police veteran and had honorably served his country as a United States Marine.
A lot of people here knew Kenny, they worked with him. His wife still works here and is a sergeant in our agency. It's important for folks to remember that our deputies, when they leave the house in the morning, they don't know if they're going to return home. It's a huge sacrifice that they make. The person accused of killing Sergeant Vann is in our facility. It's something that our deputies are aware of, and we look forward to the day that he's not here and that justice is served.
October 12, 2015, nearly 4 years after being arrested, Mark Gonzalez entered a not guilty plea, meaning the capital murder trial for the death of Officer Kenneth Vann was finally taking place. A lengthy trial would pursue, lasting over a month. The state prosecutor described the murder on day 1 of the trial.
Officers who they could not even work it because they were so devastated by what they saw. He fires 26 times. The bullets crashed through the other side of Sergeant Vann's patrol vehicle, shattering the driver's side window and literally tear him apart. It rips the entire upper torso of him with a bulletproof vest providing no protection whatsoever. So many times that his finger is fatigued. It's tired. The defendant's first words are, "I killed a cop. Don't tell no one."
Mark Gonzalez's defense team claimed he suffered a fall and hit his head days before the shooting, They claimed the subsequent concussion he suffered contributed to his actions on the day of the murder. Gonzalez's attorney spoke about the incident on the second day of the trial.
When he hit that bottom step, he slipped and he fell, and he knocked himself out. This is a well-documented neuropsychiatric phenomenon. This is when Mark knew that he in fact must have done that. Mark told Steve Starling, "Steve, don't tell anybody, not even your wife." Mark was terrified.
Dr. Brian Scopp, a professional psychiatrist, denied these claims and specified that the conditions had no impact on Gonzalez's rational thinking on the night of the murder.
I think certainly this concussion would not have affected his ability to understand the nature of his actions at the time of the offense.
Next on the stand was key witness to the case, Steve Starling, Mark Gonzalez's close friend and informant who called the police a week later to tell them Gonzalez had confessed to him about the murder on the phone. Starling described his fears after being questioned by the prosecution.
First words out of his mouth were, "I killed a cop. Don't tell no one, not even your wife." How do I turn this guy in? How do I make sure he's going to be there when they go to get him? Anybody capable of doing that to somebody that they don't even know is capable of doing anything.
After a lengthy trial lasting over a month, it was time for the verdict. Take a listen to the prosecution and defense team's closing statements before the jury deliberation.
Mark should not be executed, and that instead he should get life without parole in prison.
We know now what he is capable of. Let's not make that same mistake again.
It was time for the verdict. Guilty or not guilty.
We find the defendant Mark Gonzalez guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment.
The Bayard District Attorney's Office said it was seeking the death penalty after the conviction. A competency trial would take place 6 weeks later. Before sentencing, a jury would have to determine whether Mark Gonzalez was competent to stand trial. If found guilty, Gonzalez faced the death penalty. Officer Kenneth Vann's wife, Yvonne Vann, gave her reaction after the verdict.
Even the defense said he did it, so I don't think it was that much of a stretch for them to come up with the verdict. All our brothers and sisters in blue, yes. I think this is a very big victory for us.
Mark Gonzalez's mother disagreed with the decision.
My son is not guilty because he wasn't okay when this happened.
Them, I have no problem in forgiving. Mark Anthony Gonzalez, no. I will never forgive what he did.
District Attorney Nico LaHood explained the final competency hearing process.
Competency is relevant for two reasons. Can that person communicate with their lawyer, and can they rationally understand the proceedings that are happening before them? A defendant has to be competent to assess the final sentence, and so there's a competency hearing pending right now in front of another judge. Once that determination is made, then the judge will make the official sentence. Hypothetically, if Mr. Gonzalez is found incompetent, then he will go to a maximum security state hospital and be given the necessary medication, if that's proper, to restore his competency, and then he'll be brought back for legal sentencing.
Mark Gonzalez's day at judgment was fast approaching. This was the last turn left for his legal team to take. On the first day of the competency hearing, the judge detailed the proceedings.
I will appoint Matthew Fabian to perform the competency evaluation of your client. Should that not be satisfactory, let me know. We'll have another hearing and address whatever your problem is with that appointment. I will provide them with that opportunity at your expert's earliest convenience.
Damning evidence was played of Gonzalez speaking to his wife about the hearing. It clearly showed Gonzalez's competency.
We got a good jury. We took 5 weeks to pick this jury, so it's a 50-50 chance, you know what I mean? Don't worry, you know. It's a 50-50 chance. So it's whatever story they believe.
January 11, 2016, a Bayard County jury determined Mark Gonzalez was competent to stand trial, meaning he faced the death penalty. 5 days later, on the 16th of January, Mark Gonzalez was brought back in court for the final time to receive his death sentence. Officer Kenneth Vann's wife, Yvonne Vann, read out an impact statement moments before the sentence was handed down.
I will never have any more alone time with my husband, and my time now is truly alone in every sense of the word.
After a lengthy capital murder trial in October and a separate trial in January to address his competency, Mark Gonzalez was sentenced to death by 175th District Court Judge Mary Román.
You are hereby sentenced in accordance with Texas law to death.
Yvonne Vann spoke after the verdict.
All the citizens of Bexar County really want to know, how are they doing? How are those children? How is his wife doing? To me, this is just never forgivable. In my mind and my heart, it will never be forgivable.
Since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976, Texas has lethally injected over 590 inmates. Mark Gonzalez is currently 55 years of age and is serving his death sentence at the Pulaski Prison Unit in West Livingston, Polk County, Texas. At the time of making this video, no execution date has been set for Gonzalez. In second place on the list, we have Danny Martinez. Danny Martinez shot and killed Officer Travis Murphy while he responded to a call about a suspicious person in the Phoenix area of Arizona. On the night of May 26, 2010, police officers spotted a dark-colored Ford Mustang driving erratically in the area of 19th Avenue and Indian School Road, about a 10-minute drive from downtown Phoenix. When officers attempted to conduct a traffic stop, the vehicle drove away at high speed and was lost in the nearby neighborhood. Minutes later, a witness called the police to report that a dark-colored Mustang had collided into the rear of his vehicle on the 1900 block of West Fairmount Avenue. Officers Jillian Maulmeister and Travis Murphy responded to the call and located the Mustang. Officer Maulmeister walked into the backyard of the vacant home looking for the suspect. She heard multiple gunshots and ran back to the front of the residence, where she found Officer Murphy down on the sidewalk with multiple gunshot wounds to his waist and legs. He was rushed to the hospital, where he later died as a result of his injuries. Travis Murphy was a father of 2 and 4-year veteran of the force. After an extensive search of the area, police located Danny Martinez hiding naked inside a shed in the backyard of a nearby residence. Police also found an AR-15 assault rifle in a shed located at a house next door to the one where Martinez was found. Residents of the Phoenix area where Travis Murphy was murdered shared their thoughts about an officer being killed in the line of duty.
I'm just at a loss for words, to be honest with you, because I'm really sad about it.
There was a car backing out from my car. One officer that shouted at him, "Get down, get down, get down." And then you just heard bam, 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 bam. And then I seen the officer fall.
I couldn't imagine what they're going through. He's just doing his job.
When a tragedy like this happens, I think that it's our responsibility to show that respect and to support his family.
Danny Martinez's fingerprints and DNA were found on the rifle and the Mustang, which was registered to his father. Martinez was booked into jail on charges of first-degree murder and weapons violations. Martinez served more than 3 years in state prison on felony weapons charges in Tucson before being released in 2009. On February 9, 2011, nearly 1 year after the murder, a Maricopa County grand jury indicted Martinez on 1 count of first-degree murder of a law enforcement officer and 1 count of first-degree premeditated murder. The state filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty, alleging as aggravating factors the defendant's previous felony convictions and the fact that the victim was an on-duty police officer. July 16, 2015, 5 years after the murder of Officer Travis Murphy, it took the jury less than 24 hours to find Martinez guilty of first-degree murder on all counts. The jury deemed that aggravated factors were involved in the case, making Martinez eligible for the death penalty. I would just like to add, the reason for the lack of depth in this case is because there's no actual audio footage available online of the trial proceedings. November 17, 2015, having already been convicted in July for the 2010 killing of police officer Travis Murphy, the penalty phase of the trial was about to take place. Danny Martinez's day of destiny was in the hands of the jurors, who would decide life in prison or the death penalty.
The defendant should be sentenced to life in prison.
One of the jurors from the trial shared their thoughts on the verdict outside the court, as well as Phoenix Police Chief Mary Roberts.
I mean, we're talking about 12 shots in less than 2.5 seconds. What chance did the police officer have?
Quality, top-notch police officer, husband, and father, and he's dearly missed by every one of us.
I personally don't think that justice was served.
May 6, 2016, following a lengthy trial lasting nearly 6 years, Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Teresa Sanders sentenced Danny Martinez to life in prison without the possibility of parole after an emotional 3-hour hearing. Martinez was also ordered to serve an additional consecutive term totaling 65 years for multiple other offenses related to the incident. Troy Campbell, brother-in-law to Travis Murphy, shared his thoughts after the final sentencing hearing.
It helps out with the closure, definitely. It's just, mostly it's important to see my sister happy, and that's what's been hurting me and caused me so much anguish for these last 6 years of this trial.
Danny Martinez is currently 45 years of age. He's been incarcerated for 10 years at the Arizona State Prison Complex in Tucson. His life sentence received means he will never be released. In first place on the list, we have Marco Antonio Parilla Jr. Parilla shot and killed Florida police officer Charles Kondek while he responded to a call about noise complaints in the area. December 21, 2014, in Tarpon Springs, Florida, 2 calls were dispatched at 2 a.m. One was a bar fight and the other a noise complaint. Officer Charles Kondek responded and advised dispatch to assign the noise complaint to him as he was closest to the location. Investigators said Parilla was looking for someone and was banging on the doors of a home in the Grand Boulevard community. While Parilla was banging on the doors, a neighbor asked the woman, who remained in the car, to lower the music. When she refused, the neighbor called the police with a noise complaint. When Officer Kondek arrived, he approached the vehicle playing music. Kondek was unaware that convicted felon Marco Parilla Jr. was armed with a stolen gun and was wanted for an active warrant. Parilla was at the location to shoot the person he believed had snitched on him for violating his probation. As Parilla ran toward the vehicle, he suddenly saw Officer Kondek approaching the rear of the car. The convicted felon fired 7 rounds of his .40 caliber handgun at the officer, with 1 bullet entering the chest just above his bulletproof vest. Kondek called for backup, but did not respond after. The officer was able to fire off a couple of rounds before collapsing. Parilla then ordered the woman out of the vehicle, took the wheel, and as he fled the scene, he brutally ran over Officer Kondek. Minutes later, officers arrived to render aid, but unfortunately his injuries were too severe. Parilla was taken into custody after crashing into a vehicle and then running away on foot while being chased by police. Footage from that fatal night shows Parilla running from a car. The audio clearly highlights the attending officer's desperation to save their colleague's life.
I'm calling everybody in right now. We have an officer down. Gunshot fired. Get everybody here now. Come on!
Born in 1991, Marco Antonio Parilla Jr. had an extensive criminal history with over 30 felony arrests and over 10 convictions. Parilla was released from a Florida prison 6 months before the murder, after serving a little more than 2 years for leaving the scene of a crash, as well as for various drug charges. Parilla later told deputies he shot Officer Kondek because he didn't want to go back to prison. A neighbor, who was a good friend of the person Parilla believed snitched on him, was interviewed for a local news station.
I feel like I missed something somewhere, or there's something else I could have did. I just look and I see a crowd of people, okay, and then like, I'm like, what the, and that was it.
Officer Charles Kondek lost his life within minutes of responding to a call early that December morning, just days before Christmas. He was 45 years old and just 3 years from retiring. Kondek served on the Tarpon Springs police force for more than 17 years. He left behind a wife and 5 children. Officer Kondek was recognized as a great listener with a calm demeanor to de-escalate situations. He was very respected for his reputation and characteristics within his community, where his legacy still lives on. Residents of Tarpon Springs shared their thoughts on the murder of Officer Kondek.
I just can't believe this. Why would someone shoot our police officers? Why? When they are protecting us.
I'm just so sorry. My heart aches for him.
I'm glad they caught him because he needs to pay for what he's done to a father who has children and for his wife. I mean, this is wrong.
I can't believe what's happening in the country today.
He was a straight officer, good officer, by the book officer. We have to protect people who protect us.
One of Charles Kondek's daughters spoke to a local news station and paid tribute to her father.
Wish I could have spent more time with him and had more father time. He was a big family man. He loved his family. He just cared about helping people. I have gotten a lot of condolences from everybody. And just walking up here and seeing this means a lot. It means a lot to me and our family.
Charles Kondek Sr. also shared his pain and torment of losing his only son.
I tell him every time I'm sorry that things had to be the way they were. I have dreams of him bleeding out. I picture him shot by himself laying there bleeding out and nobody's helping him. And it's brutal. All I want now, you know, he just doesn't talk back to me, but excuse me, I'm sorry. Animals that do this, that don't respect, come up from behind and shoot. I don't care, police or anybody, come up from behind and just assassinate them like that. They're cowards.
In this next camera footage shown, you can hear Parilla's name being called out in his first court appearance.
Marco Antonio Parilla.
Marco, why did you kill that officer? You have anything to say for yourself?
I apologize to the family. That was not my intention.
You apologize?
Yes.
Marco Antonio Parilla Jr., 23, was booked into Pinellas County Jail on December 21, 2014, and was being held without bond on a charge of first-degree murder. Parilla's family member, Juana Martinez, gave an interview to a local news station and made a strange statement, claiming her nephew was a good person.
If he say he don't want to mean it to do it, it's because he's not a bad boy. He's a good guy.
Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Galtieri and Tarpon Springs Police Chief Robert Cochin shared their thoughts on the arrest of Parilla and the murder of Officer Kondek.
So when he gets there, he walks through the apartment complex and he's banging on the door. And the person who he was looking for didn't answer. He took his gun out, which was a .40 caliber handgun that had 7 rounds in it, and he fired him at the officer, striking the officer once in the upper body. His reason for shooting the officer was he, quote, felt like a caged rat. He puts the car in reverse, and he backs up out of the driveway, and he runs over the cop. As he turned north on Athens, he struck a power pole up there, just about knocked the power pole over, to show you how fast he was going and the impact, how significant the impact was of the collision. He careens off the power pole and into a parked truck.
It is with a heavy heart that I have to do this. Charles Kondek, who we all refer to as Charlie K., was a man who committed his life to this profession and to his community. He made sacrifices to serve and protect the citizens of Tarpon Springs. That's one of the most devastating things. The sheriff and I were up there today when you got to deal with the kids and the wife. This makes no sense.
You have these bad guys that they get shot 10, 15 times, they don't die. You know, the good guy, one shot and he dies. Something's messed up with that.
The 28th of December 2014, 7 days after the murder, Officer Charles Kondek's funeral was held at the Idlewild Baptist Church in Lutz, Florida. Officers paid tribute to their fallen friend.
Our hearts go out to Charlie's family. We know that they are suffering. But we thank him for sharing him with us.
What was Officer Kondek like? That question hit me like a punch to the stomach. Realizing I was never going to see or talk to Charlie ever again.
October 12, 2017, nearly 3 years after the death of Officer Charles Kondek, Marco Antonio Parilla Jr. pleads guilty for first-degree murder. Pinellas County Judge Joseph Ballone accepts the guilty plea. Parilla's guilty plea meant there would be no trial for the murder. Instead, there would be one for sentencing.
I would like to first say sorry to you. I'm writing this apology to ask you for your forgiveness. I never wanted to take the life of no one, let alone a hero. I really want everyone in the community to know that I am not a monster and that I am sorry for causing pain to the community. I beg you to please spare my life and give me a chance to better myself and others around me.
For the sentencing trial, the jury would decide if he would spend his life in prison or be condemned to death row.
We're trying to persuade the jury, whenever that happens, that his life is worth saving and that he should die of natural causes in prison rather than be executed.
The state attorney has or is seeking the death penalty. We fully support that. We are talking about one of our heroes, one of our police officers that this guy murdered in cold blood.
The 13th of March 2018, Pinellas County Court. 5 months after Parilla's guilty plea for first-degree murder, the sentencing trial is now underway. Major Jeff Young of the Tarpon Springs Police Force expressed his hope for justice to be served to Parilla.
You know, it's not an easy day, that's for sure. Teresa is here every day looking for justice for Charlie. We're standing strong alongside her. Now, we're here to honor our fallen brother, Charlie. Not a day goes by that we don't think about him, the sacrifice that he and his family made.
March 15, 2018, day 3 of the trial, Officer John Gibson, who attended to his friend and colleague Charles Kondek as he lay dying from the injuries sustained, gave his testimony of the events which happened that night.
It burned into my head. It basically is looking right at me like he wanted to say something and he just couldn't. At one point, I actually see like tears well up in his eye. Run down his face.
Camera footage of the chase and officers attempting to revive Officer Kondek were played to the court and jury.
Charlie 106, Officer Charles Kondek. All units, no response. Come on!
Listen to the state prosecutor describe the shooting.
Bang, 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 bang. Bang, bang, bang. 7 shots that man took at Officer Kondek.
The female passenger, who was waiting in the vehicle as Officer Kondek approached about the noise complaint, testified about the events of the shooting.
He pulls out his gun from the back pocket and then they start shooting at each other.
Okay, does Marco actually shoot through into the car where you're at?
Well, yeah, they shot through the car because when I look down, that's all I hear is glass.
Parilla's defense team hoped for a sympathetic jury, claiming a physically abusive childhood and neglectful mother affected Parilla's decision-making that day.
She was bad, Mom. She hit him, she beat him, she hit him with belts. No one is going to try to excuse what he did. He has accepted responsibility, and he is extremely remorseful.
Parilla's defense team had to sway one of 12 jurors for him to get life in prison over the death penalty. March 22nd, 9 days into the trial, it was time for Parilla's testimony. First, the defense team questioned him. They played the police interview footage of when Parilla was informed he killed Officer Kondek.
Mr. Parilla, at the beginning of you being in the interview room, did you know that you had shot and killed Officer Kondek?
No, sir.
Mr. Parilla, was this the first moment you realized you had killed Officer Kondek?
Yes, sir.
Before that, you did not know?
No, sir.
Parilla then apologized to the Kondek family.
I'm sorry from the bottom of my heart. And I know it wasn't supposed to be this way. I wish I could take it back. Every second of my life, I wish I could take it back.
Next was the prosecution's turn to question Parilla.
That night, you made a choice, and that was to end Officer Kondek's life. And now, today, you're going to ask this jury to make a choice for you. Is that right?
Yes.
And let your life be here to communicate with your kids and families when you summarily made that decision for Officer Kondek. Does that sound fair?
No, it does not.
I don't have any questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect examination?
March 23rd, nearly 2 weeks into the trial, closing statements were made by the defense and prosecution teams before the jury made its verdict.
A sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole is the appropriate and the just sentence for Marco Parilla.
He has made his choices. He made his choice about Officer Kondek. He was the judge and jury.
In the afternoon of March 23rd, after 3 hours of deliberations and closing statements, it was time for the verdict. For Marco Antonio Parilla Jr., this meant life or death.
Section C, the jury unanimously find that Marco Parilla should be sentenced to death.
In an incredible turn of events, the court clerk read out what she thought was the jury's decision. Mr. Kondek's family erupted into cheers as they heard the death penalty for Parilla, but it was not the sentence they wanted. In the last section of the form, jurors had to check either yes or no for the following statement. We, the jury, unanimously find that Marco Parilla should be sentenced to death. The jury had accidentally ticked yes the first time around, which was incorrect, as the jury's decision was 2 votes for life and 10 for death. Under Florida law, all 12 jurors had to vote unanimously for the death sentence, meaning 1 vote would be life in prison for Parilla. Pinellas County Judge Joseph Ballone addressed the error to the jurors.
Members of the jury, there's a bit of an issue here with Section D, all right? This is the question in Section D. Having unanimously found that at least one aggravating factor has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt in Section A, we, the jury, unanimously find that Marco Parilla should be sentenced to death, okay? And you check yes, okay, which means that all 12 of you believe that death is the appropriate sentence, okay? Because if you check yes, you unanimously found that that's the appropriate sentence. So then the vote should be 12-0 for death, if that's true. Does that make sense? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you another jury verdict form, and it's really not time to deliberate or anything. Just fix the mistake, okay?
The jury returned 20 minutes later with the form and vote corrected.
Section C, we, the jury, unanimously find that Marco Parilla should be sentenced to death. No. If no, you vote to impose a sentence of life as 2 to 10. So say we all, dated this 23rd day of March 2018 in Pinellas County, Florida, signed by the both person.
The vote was what the jury intended all along. 10 chose the death penalty and 2 voted for a life sentence. In the courtroom, the cheers quickly turned to tears. Before the judge gave the final sentence, Officer Charles Kondek's wife and his father read out impact statements while facing Parilla.
Today, you killed my husband. I wasn't supposed to say goodbye to him in a coffin. I wasn't supposed to be a widow at 43. You shoved me into this life of grief, and I will never be the same person. The least you can do is look at me. That's the least you can do. You shouldn't be alive, even if it's in prison. You don't deserve the right to talk to your family, to write anybody, or to have visits with your family. You took those things from us. I wanted the death penalty for you, but either way, your time in hell is coming.
It's terrible that your sons will grow up without a good dad. And be honest, make sure you tell them that you're a murderer and that you killed a police officer. You don't deserve to have kids. You're a coward. Chucky will always be in our hearts and thoughts and missed greatly. No one will miss you, Marco, no one. Because you are the worst of the worst. And this is the worst of the worst situation. Not Hitler, none of that crap. This is the worst of the worst. You're an animal, and I hope you die the worst death possible. A shiv across the neck or something. Sorry, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nearly 3 years after the murder took place, a trial lasting a fortnight, and 4 hours of deliberations, it was time for Judge Joseph Ballone to hand down the sentence to Parilla.
This is a horrible tragedy that never should occur, except for the selfish actions of his defendant by cheating at Officer Kondek 7 times just because he didn't want to go back to prison. And no doubt his actions show that this is an aggravated case. He believes aggravated because the fact that the person that he killed was a unique and great member of this deep community. And that's what made it so tragic. Fortunately, the only thing that brought him back was if the defendant just blew. But he did it. Did it intentionally, did for the fact. Shot him, ran over him, and then fled. So at this point, that can't be right. This is a tremendous tragedy for the Kondek family, the Tarpon Springs Police Department, for the community of Tarpon Springs, who's loved by all in that community. It's a tragedy for the people of Pinellas County. And Mr. Parilla will spend every single remaining day of his life, no matter how long that is, in the Florida prison system. And I know that the family was hoping for a different result, but he's going to die in prison. And only 27 now, and he's going to have a whole lot of days, potentially, for him to think about what he's done. We don't know how long it's going to last in prison. Some people that don't last very long. The life expectancy is not all that high in prison for various reasons. But every day he's there, he'll have an opportunity to think about what he's done, what he could have. The results that his actions have on this family and on this community and on the Tarpon Springs Police Department and the people of Tarpon Springs. Thank you.
Chief Assistant State Attorney Bruce Bartlett and Defense Attorney Bjorn Brunvin said this was the first time they'd seen a wrong sentence announced in a capital murder case. Todd Stewart, who was one of the jurors, said, "I was completely horrified. It just completely blew me away. It was like a nightmare. I couldn't imagine that happening to the family. They had already gone through so much." Jonathan Morales, another juror, said he felt nauseous when he heard the wrong announcement. Morales added, "The feeling of seeing the family get justice taken away with a false verdict, it was really hard to see." Marco Antonio Parilla Jr. is currently 33 years of age and is serving his life sentence at the Zephyr Hills Correctional Institution in Florida. Parilla will never be released. And that's all we got for this episode. Stay in tune for more courtroom videos.